All right, everyone. So Ryan here, and today we are on part 3 of the JoJo Bizarre Adventures musical references. So just like part 1 and 2, we're going to be talking about some of the musical references that the author just scatters throughout all the different arcs for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And we're going to be going through all of the arcs, not just some. So here we go. Alright, so getting right into it, we're going to start off with Star Platinum, the big MC stand for Jotaro. So, going through it, we know that Araki possibly designed Star Platinum after a Brazilian group named Nenhum de Nós, and he's probably named after the song The Marble Astronaut. This was really interesting, and it kind of points it in the lyrics. Next up, we've got my fave. We've got Muhammad Avdol. So, Muhammad Avdol has some great scenes in Stardust Crusaders, but Araki named him after the American singer Paula Abdul. Lastly, we're talking about Avdol's stand, Magician Red, who has an attack called Crossfire Hurricane. Well, this is probably from the opening line of the Rolling Stones song Jumping Jack Flash. Also, another reference is the first meeting between Avdol and Dio, which Araki has said could be a reference to the Paula Abdul song Cold Hearted. So now we start talking about Kakayoin, and Kakayoin's favorite musician is Sting. So it doesn't even miss a beat that Araki modeled him after Sting. And just for shits and giggles, I threw in a picture of Sting meeting Sting. Alright, so now we're talking about Kakayoin's stand, which is Hierophant Green. Well, Hierophant Green may have been inspired from the Creedence Clearwater Revival album, Green River. So this next one may be really obvious, I don't know. It took me a second to figure it out, honestly. But we're talking about Gray Fly. So, Araki has said that he named Gray Fly after the musician and Eagles band member of Glenn Frey. So now we talk about one of the only 3 to make it out of Egypt, and we're talking about Jean-Pierre Polnareff. So, Jean-Pierre Polnareff was created after the French musician of Michael Polnareff. When I look at this, I don't get Polnareff from JoJo. I get Don Flamingo vibes from One Piece all day. Alright, I'll give you 3 guesses who this next one is, but Stevie Wonder can see it. So we're talking about Imposter Captain Tennille. Well, Imposter Captain Tennille was modeled after the 70s group of Captain and Tennille. Because remember, our love will keep us together. So I've been waiting for this one, and we're talking about Forever. Forever is an orangutan with a special stand that allows him to manifest a cargo ship. Well, Forever was created by one of my favorite groups growing up because we all know who's for the children. And you know who that is? We're talking about Wu-Tang. So Wu-Tang Forever was the inspiration for Forever in the JoJo Bizarre Adventure anime. So next we're talking about Devo the Cursed and Soul Sacrificed. Well, Devo the Cursed was named after, well, I guess you can figure it out, one of the 80s biggest bands of Mark Mothersbaugh and Devo. So there's a second part to this when we start talking about Devo's stand of Soul Sacrifice. Well, we already know that Araki has pulled Soul Sacrifice from the Santana album by the same name. So next we go on to Rubber Soul and Yellow Temperance. Well, there's a pretty strong chance that Araki has said that Rubber Soul is named after the Beatles album of the same title of, well, Rubber Soul. So next up we're talking about Whole Horse. And this one took me a little while to figure out because I just couldn't make the connection. But so Whole Horse has a stand that allows him to manifest a gun, and whatever he points at and aims and shoots, it will hit its intended target. So Whole Horse is named after the American rock duo of Hall & Oates. Go figure. Well, you're making my dreams come true. So next up we're talking about Jay Guile. In the local version, Jay Guile is called Centerfold, but Jay Guile is named after the 70s band Jay Giles Band. Alright, so next up we're talking about the Empress. Well, the Empress goes by the name of Nina. So there's a strong chance that Araki named Nina after the German new wave singer by the same name of Nina. So next up we're talking about ZZ and Wheel of Fortune. So ZZ can manifest a car and he stays inside of it. So mainly all we ever see is that arm. But ZZ is created after one of our favorite iconic rock bands of ZZ Top. Man, I love those boys, and I love the idea that Jeff Beard doesn't even have a beard. So next we're talking about Dio's main henchwoman, Enya the Hag, and her stand Justice. So Enya the Hag is the main henchwoman that puts out most of the tarot cards and most of the opponents for Jotaro and his gang. Well, Enya the Hag and her stand were based and influenced around the Irish pop singer by the same name of Enya. So there's even a part in the Justice arc where Enya mentions former Beatle John Lennon by name. So I've been waiting for this one on the list, and we're talking about Steely Dan and his Stan the Lover. So Steely Dan took a 45-second from Jotaro's Stan Star Platinum and is one of the best beatdowns. But Steely Dan, if you haven't figured it out, and Stevie Wonder can see this, was named after the American pop band of Steely Dan. So next up, we're talking about the son and his stand user, Arabia Fats. So Arabia Fats is named after the musician of Fats Domino. That's a pretty interesting one. So next up, we're talking about Death 13 and his stand user, Manish Boy. No, Manish Boy is not a baby. This is an adult with an evil mindset. But Manish Boy is named after one of my favorite blues singers, Muddy Waters, and his song, Manish Boy. So this is just something fun, but Muhammad Avdol has 3 special chickens, Lionel, Prince, and Michael. Well, they are in reference to Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, and my favorite, Prince. So next up we're talking about Cameo. Cameo just gets bodied in a low-def beatdown where he literally gets pissed on. But he is named after the 70s funk group going by the same name of Cameo. So this one isn't hard to figure out, and any Hocus Pocus fans can, but we're talking about Midler and her stand High Priestess. So Midler is literally named after the singer and actress by the same name, Bette Midler. So we know that Araki loves to use pop music in his openings and endings, so if you're an 80s rock music lover, I guarantee you know this. I haven't guessed it yet. The ending credits is the Bengals Walk Like an Egyptian. So now we're going to be talking about my main man, or well, should I say my main dog, Iggy. So Iggy and his stand, the Fool, are modeled after a punk icon. I'm sure you can probably guess by the name, but if you can't, it's Iggy Pop. This is an amazing one just because I love both of the characters and Iggy Pop has been around forever. So now we're going to be talking about Endul, or the Terra Cobra of Gib. So Endul gives JoJo's crew a ton of trouble out in the desert with a water-based stand. Well, Endul is originally named and created after the Senegalese musician Yesui Endul. So now we're going to be talking about Zenyatta and Mandata. So respectively together, they are Oingo Boingo brothers. So Oingo Boingo brothers have 2 separate powers. So let's focus on the older brother first. He has the power to shift and sculpt and mold his face into anything that he wants. This allows him to cause some mayhem from the inside. But with his younger brother, he has the Oingo Boingo book. And any image or drawing that is created inside this book stands and will happen. It's just a matter of when. So what you see in the book will happen. So as you can see with the comic, that Oingo Boingo inspired a lot of the artwork and the style for the Oingo Boingo brothers, as you can see in the album here. So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about Anubis. So Anubis has a couple different users. He's not a normal stand. So the first one we're talking about is Shaka. Shaka is the first user of Anubis, but then we're going to talk about the second user, who is Khan. So Khan and Shaka are named after the amazing singer, and it makes sense because of her cutting style and grace, Shaka Khan. So after talking about one beautiful female, let's shift gears and talk about another. And we're talking about Mariah. So Mariah is a female stand user in JJBA, and she herself is modeled after one of our favorite pop singers from the 90s, Mariah Carey. So now we're talking about a truly detestable piece of scum, and we're talking about Elise. So Elise is a villain who enjoys picking on people that are weaker or children. Armed with his axe and his special stand of de-aging, he is modeled after the American duo, the Elise brothers. So next up, we're talking about the Darby brothers. So we're talking about Terrence and Daniel. With Daniel being the oldest, he has the power to seal souls away that gamble, while his younger brother has the power to seal souls away that are defeated in video games. Well, each one of the brothers have an incredibly powerful stand and are some of the last baddies that JoJo sees before Vanilla Ice and Dio, but they were modeled after Terrence Trent D'Arby. Alright, so next up we're getting into one of my favorite fights with Pet Shop versus Iggy. Well, Pet Shop is a hawk with a bad attitude and has the stand of Horus, which is an ice-based stand. So, Pet Shop is literally named after the 80s and early 90s hip-hop group of the Pet Shop Boys. So next we're talking about Kenny G and his stand tenor sax. So in the American version, they refer to him as Billie Jean, like Michael Jackson, but he was modeled after the musician of Kenny G himself. So this next one is my favorite villain and goes by the name of Vanilla Ice. Well, he has a localized name that goes by the reference of Cool as Ice, but Vanilla Ice is literally, and anybody can see this, is modeled after the rapper by the same name of Vanilla Ice. Because remember, Ice Ice Baby. So we have a second reference. So talking about Vanilla Ice, we're talking about his stand, Cream. So Cream is a reference to the world's first supergroup and massive British rock band themselves, of Cream. Next up, we're talking about Suzy Q's butler, Roses. So, Araki has stated that Roses is a reference to the 90s mega band with Axl Rose and Slash of Guns N' Roses. Another little piece of musical trivia is in the JoJo Bizarre Adventure fighting game, we're talking about Kakyoin's ending theme uses some of the similar opening chords to Stairway to Heaven. So in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Escape from Bizarre Mansion, we have a character called Deja Maker. Well, unless you're a rock fan, you're probably not going to get this. But Deja Maker is modeled after Led Zeppelin's song Dire McCur. So next we're talking about his stand. And his stand's name is House of Holy, modeled after the Led Zeppelin album of the same name, Houses of Holy. So now we're talking about a stand that goes by the name of Strange Relation. This is in parody to Prince's Strange Relationship album. Alright, I've been waiting for this one to save for last, and we're talking about Dio and his stand, The World. So The World is modeled after Dio's song of Holy Diver, and even has a reference to the scuba tanks on the world's back. Also, the concept of Dio being in Egypt might come from the Dio song Egypt, The Chains Are On, from The Last in Line.